Hey everyone, thanks for watching. My name is Christian. This is Shoosha. And today we are taking a break from our regularly scheduled Heart of Darkness programming to read Ernest Hemingway's Cat in the Rain. It's a short, beautiful story, and I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. This is Cat in the Rain by Ernest Hemingway. There were only two Americans stopping at the hotel. They did not know any of the people they passed on the stairs on their way to and from their room. Their room was on the second floor, facing the sea. It also faced the public garden and the war monument. There were big palms and green benches in the public garden. In the good weather, there was always an artist with his easel. Artists liked the way the palms grew and the bright colors of the hotels facing the gardens and the sea. Italians came from a long way off to look up at the war monument. It was made of bronze and glistened in the rain. It was raining. The rain dripped from the palm trees. Water stood in pools on the gravel paths. The sea broke in a long line in the rain and slipped back down the beach to come up and break again in a long line in the rain. The motor cars were gone from the square by the war monument. Across the square, in the doorway of the cafe, a waiter stood looking out at the empty square. Thank you, Shush. The American wife stood at the window looking out. Outside, right under their window, a cat was crouched under one of the dripping green tables. The cat was trying to make herself so compact that she would not be dripped on. "I'm going down and get that kitty," the American wife said. "I'll do it," her husband offered from the bed. "No, I'll get it. The poor kitty out trying to keep dry under a table." The husband went on reading, lying propped up with the two pillows at the foot of the bed. "Don't get wet," he said. The wife went downstairs, and the hotel owner stood up and bowed to her as she passed the office. His desk was at the far end of the office. He was an old man and very tall. "Il piove," the wife said. She liked the hotel keeper. Il piove, by the way, just means it is raining. "Sì, sì, signora. Brutto tempo. It's very bad weather." He stood behind his desk in the far end of the dim room. The wife liked him. She liked the deadly serious way he received any complaints. She liked his dignity. She liked the way he wanted to serve her. She liked the way he felt about being a hotel keeper. She liked his old, heavy face and big hands. Liking him, she opened the door and looked out. It was raining harder. A man in a rubber cape was crossing the empty square to the cafe. The cat would be around to the right. Perhaps she could go along under the eaves. As she stood in the doorway, an umbrella opened behind her. It was the maid who looked after their room. "You must not get wet," she smiled, speaking Italian. Of course, the hotel keeper had sent her. With the maid holding the umbrella over her, she walked along the gravel path until she was under their window. The table was there, washed bright green in the rain, but the cat was gone. She was suddenly disappointed. The maid looked up at her. "Ha perduto qualche cosa, signora?" Which means, "Have you lost something, madam?" "There was a cat," said the American girl. "A cat?" "Sì, il gatto." "A cat," the maid laughed. "A cat in the rain." "Yes," she said, "under the table." Then, "Oh, I wanted it so much. I wanted a kitty." When she talked English, the maid's face tightened. "Come, signora," she said. "We must get back inside. You will be wet." "I suppose so," said the American girl. They went back along the gravel path and passed in the door. The maid stayed outside to close the umbrella. As the American girl passed the office, the padrone bowed from his desk. Something felt very small and tight inside the girl. The padrone made her feel very small and at the same time really important. She had a momentary feeling of being of supreme importance. A momentary feeling of being of supreme importance. She went on up the stairs. She opened the door of the room. George was on the bed, reading. "Did you get the cat?" he asked, putting the book down. "It was gone." "Wonder where it went to," he said, resting his eyes from reading. She sat down on the bed. "I wanted it so much," she said. "I don't know why I wanted it so much. I wanted that poor kitty. It isn't any fun to be a poor kitty out in the rain." George was reading again. And notice how he was resting his eyes from reading just a few sentences earlier, indicating to us that he's been reading for a long time. She went over and sat in front of the mirror of the dressing table, looking at herself with the hand glass. She studied her profile, first one side and then the other. Then she studied the back of her head and her neck. "Don't you think it would be a good idea if I let my hair grow out?" she asked, looking at her profile again. George looked up and saw the back of her neck, clipped close like a boy's. "I like it the way it is." It was in fashion at the time. "I get so tired of it," she said. "I get so tired of looking like a boy." George shifted his position in the bed. He hadn't looked away from her since she started to speak. "You look pretty darn nice," he said. She laid the mirror down on the dresser and went over to the window and looked out. It was getting dark. "I want to pull my hair back tight and smooth and make a big knot at the back that I can feel," she said. "I want to have a kitty to sit on my lap and purr when I stroke her." "Yeah," George said from the bed. "And I want to eat at a table with my own silver, and I want candles. I want it to be spring, and I want to brush my hair out in front of a mirror, and I want a kitty, and I want some new clothes." "Oh, shut up and get something to read," George said. He was reading again. His wife was looking out of the window. It was quite dark now, and still raining in the palm trees. "Anyway, I want a cat," she said. "I want a cat. I want a cat now. If I can't have long hair or any fun, I can have a cat." George was not listening. He was reading his book. His wife looked out of the window, where the light had come on in the square. Someone knocked at the door. "Avanti," George said. He looked up from his book. In the doorway stood the maid. She held a big tortoise-shell cat pressed tight against her and swung down against her body. "Excuse me," she said. "The padrone asked me to bring this for the signora." And that's the end. So I think it's a lot of very pretty sentences. It's really poetic. It's very lyrical, this story, and so it's just pleasant to read, pleasant, I hope, to listen to. It's also very interesting. There's a lot happening in just these few pages of text. Obviously, the main source of tension is between George and his wife, who never gets a name. She's the main character, and yet she doesn't get a name, which is curious. And I think that's probably, it's symbolic. You know, she's the main character of the story, and yet she's not named because she doesn't really matter. You know, there's this moment, she had a momentary feeling of being of supreme importance. And of course, I'm not saying she actually doesn't matter. And in fact, the story, by making her the main character, clearly doesn't say that she doesn't actually matter. But in the relationship, in her marriage, she doesn't really matter very much. George can hardly be bothered to look up from his book. And I think it's interesting to imagine what a modern retelling of this story might look like, where I think George would be on his laptop or on his phone and probably researching crypto or stocks instead of reading books. And where would they be vacationing? Maybe the Maldives instead of Italy? It's very easy to transplant the same relationship dynamics where the girl just wants a little attention, a little affection, some conversation, her love languages, and the guy is too busy focused in on his ambitions. Now I say ambitions, why not just his entertainment? Well, again, we get this interesting line, "Wonder where it went to," he said, resting his eyes from reading. And then he goes back to reading immediately again when his wife starts talking. And the only time he looks up is when she starts talking about her appearance and how she wants to look different. And he's like, whoa, 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 slow down. "I like it the way it is. You look pretty darn nice," he said. These are the only lines when he's willing to look up from his books. But I mentioned ambition. It's pretty widely accepted that this story is at least partly autobiographical. Hemingway and his wife, his first wife, visited this Italian coastal town right around just before this story was published. The town is called Rapallo, which is in the northwest of Italy. I got this like southern Italy kind of vibe from the beach and the sea, but it's not. It's tucked up in the northwest corner, kind of by the Alps. He went there with his first wife, and Hemingway was immensely ambitious and super hardworking and not an awesome husband. And so it seems to me and to many literary scholars that he's essentially kind of excoriating himself with this story and trying to imagine things from his wife's perspective. And I can't remember exactly what source this came from, but supposedly Hemingway's wife on that particular trip even wanted a kitty for herself and complained about not having one. I'll leave you with this. One thing that's really fascinating about this story and that makes it pleasant to read is that unlike almost every other Hemingway story, it actually has a happy ending. Throughout the short story, there's this parallel line of love running parallel to where there should be love in the marriage, but, you know, there's not too much of it. But running parallel to that, you have this padrone, this innkeeper, and his maid, who are both looking out for this woman. Where does the story choose to leave us? Does it leave us with this poor, unnamed wife, desolated by the lack of attention and affection from her ambitious husband? No. It leaves us with her getting a cat from this kind and attentive innkeeper. So I think Hemingway would kind of hate the idea of a moralizing story, and yet I do think that this story clearly demonstrates like the value of just showing up and caring for other people, and how much good you can do just by paying attention to other people's needs when you show up to work every day. So I think that's a really lovely part of this lovely story. Hope you enjoyed reading it with us, and we will be back again soon. Thanks.